Hey, welcome back to the channel, everybody. And today we're going to do part 2 of the Race to Tashi Station diorama build series. In the first episode, I showed you the completed model. And as we usually do in my diorama build series, we're going to then work one from start to finish and have it be the companion piece to this. So in this one here, we have the Tatooine landscape. I'm going to take these ships off so you can see what I've got here. And the Tatooine landscape is sort of like a canyon, maybe a dried up waterbed, riverbed with some very light moss, very deserty. And then we have the finished edge here, what I like to call the live edge, and then just a series of different weathering powders and different things. We're going to walk through it. And what we're going to do is make part 2, the companion piece. And we're going to actually make Tashi Station. So along with doing this type of landscape, we're also going to put a little Tashi Station building. They're racing the Tashi Station. So let's get started. So now what I've done, usually in a lot of these, I use a piece of foam board. And this is the foam board that I use. And it comes, I buy this stuff at Home Depot. And it's called Formula NGX. And we've talked about it on a couple of other videos, but it's a very stable, very cool product. It's 1 inch thick, and it's very stable and sturdy, and it cuts beautifully with a typical foam knife. And so that's a good base for these types of dioramas. I do use other bases, but this one works particularly well for cutting for these types of dioramas. So what I've done here is I'm going to move this out of the way. And what I've done is I have a smaller piece of foam board. Now, just for the record, one of these pieces is a 4 foot by 4 foot piece. And I have, this is my 8th diorama out of it. So it costs like $9. So it's a good value. And what I did was I just basically made the shape that interests me. So what I like to do is I like to take this piece of scrap, and then the dark outline around there is the shape that I'm going to do. And if I don't get it right the first time, I just kind of make it until I get it right. And then I like to take my heavy duty Sharpie marker, and I like to put cut around it, because I tell you, I run into situations sometimes. And then just there for the Sharpie marker, I put building. So that's kind of where I'd like to see the building wind up. So let's get into cutting now. So as we've talked about before, I like to use, this is my foam cutter that I use. And it's a pretty good one. It was maybe about, I don't know, $25 at the hobby store. And it's just got a hot wire cutter on this end. And all you do is turn it on, and it makes a nice clean cut. So what we're gonna do is, like in the other videos I've done in this series, I'm gonna also put the live edge on it by twisting this piece as we go. So here we go. I'm gonna turn it on, and then we're just gonna start cutting. Just gonna come in, and you can kind of hear it cut. And I'm just going to trace around like this. I'm going to get the basic shape of it first, all right? So I don't know if you can see it cutting, and we can always fine tune it a little bit if we have to. Definitely it's just kind of a rough start, but we're going to get that first piece all cut like that. Okay, there's the first, and like I said, we're just going to rough cut it now and then sort of put the finishing touches on it here. So we're going to keep cutting here, kind of have it come around. And if it doesn't make the shape you want initially, we're going to go back. We can always go back and tune it up a little bit. Right? So here we go, like that. I'm going to bring it like that. And I'm just following that shape. Right? And in a minute, of course, the other thing too is, this is scrap, but keep the scrap, because you never know when that's going to come in handy. These come in handy for all kinds of different little things. So we're going to do that. I'm going to remove this out. So you can see here, this is kind of my rough shape. All right, rough shape. And now I'd like to go through and get a little bit more fine detail on it. So I'm going to kind of do that, and then we're going to put that live edge on it. And the way you do that is you just sort of follow your line, and you rotate the wire back and forth, in and out. What that does is it puts that nice edge on it, okay? So I'm going to continue to go around that whole thing like that. And real quick, I like to call this kind of like a professional finish. This is kind of what separates really good diorama from just sort of a basic or beginner one. And I think a couple of you might have followed that technique when we were doing the Geonosis one. And I do know that some people have had really good success with it. So I'm happy to hear that that's going on. So, let me know what you think of this technique. If you like the live edge, or if there's something you do differently, let me know. If you have a different technique, by all means, I'm all ears, right? So we're just going to keep going, doing this. All right. And you can take it as far as you want. You can do as little or as much of a live edge as you want. So we're going to just keep going around like this. I've got a little bit more I want to cut there. All right. And that kind of gives you the shape that I'm looking for. So I'm going to, off camera, go a little bit around this a little bit more and just continue to do live edge. So then what you can do is you can kind of come in at the bottom and undercut it a little bit. And what that does is it kind of provides what I call a floating live edge. So when you do that and you paint it black, then it sort of looks as almost though it's hovering above the table. And I really like that look. So that is the first thing. Now, the other thing is I chose this shape because I thought it would be kind of cool to be able to make almost like pieces that sort of kind of fit together. So you could do something like that or something like that. But, this one's a little bit smaller. But we'll continue fine-tuning it. But there's essentially the base for the Tashi Station section of the diorama. So once again, we're going to just kind of go over it here. So that's what it kind of looks like. I'm gonna tune it up a little bit, and then ultimately we're going in this direction with it. But that's a good base. And then the other thing that we're going to need for part 2, there's a couple of things that you're going to need for part 2, including toilet paper. Yep, just regular old cheap toilet paper. And then go get yourself a whole bunch of glue. Now, I recommend always having 3 or 4 bottles of this cheap glue from the dollar store on hand, because it's a great way to make the paper mache that I like to use a lot. This is about $1.25 per bottle. You don't have to make expensive stuff. I'm even going to show you in another diorama build series how to make your own glue, so you don't even need to buy this. I just happened to be at the dollar store picking up some other stuff, so it was easy enough to get. So get toilet paper and that. And then the other thing you're going to need is get yourself some tin foil, whatever kind of tin foil you have. We're going to shape the tin foil. We're going to shape roughly into these sort of mesas. Okay, so we're going to need that. It's always good to have a Sharpie marker on hand. And finally, I'm sure by now you probably have a glue gun of some sort. Any kind of glue gun. That's going to make it really helpful. So stay tuned. That's going to be all in part 2, where we then take what we've done today and go into the next step, which is going to be start roughing in. We're going to rough in these mesas and make them stick out. Okay, that's going to be in part 2. Thanks so much for looking. Get your stuff and we'll keep on building.